Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Suit Up, the Warframe frame review series. Today we're back, we're going to be taking a look at a frame that, to be honest, I didn't enjoy that much when I first got hold of him, and that is Nezha. Right now there's two ways to acquire him. That's through sortie rewards if you complete the sortie every day. By the end of the rotation you will have him pretty easily. Or if you don't want to touch sorties with a 10-foot barge pole, you can either pick him up in trade chat or on the market for 225 platinum, where he's going to come with a potato and a Warframe slot. So in terms of stats, how does he stack up? Well, with 225 health at rank 30, he's got the joint lowest health of all the frames, on par with frames like Loki and Mag. In addition to that, he's got the joint third lowest shield, tied with a whole bunch of frames like Nova or Loki once again. So his survivability stats, they're pretty low to be honest, although his base armor of 175 does make him a little bit tankier. It does get better from here though, with an above average energy reserve of 225, that is actually pretty decent, as well as a sprint speed of 1.15, making him one of the faster runners. So with his stats not making him obviously stand out as a frame, once again it's down to the interaction with his powers that makes him tick, right? That's absolutely right. His first ability is Firewalker. Nezha will leave a trail of flames behind him, giving him a 20% movement speed increase and dealing 200 heat damage per second with a chance to set enemies on fire. Any friendly that walks through the fire will have any status procs cleansed from him. In addition to that, if Firewalkers are active when you teleport with Blazing Chakram, his second ability, it will detonate at the destination. It deals 1250 fire damage in a 6 meter radius with a chance to proc status. The ability itself is toggled, so it's affected by duration and efficiency, like all toggled abilities are, and as you would expect, all damages are affected by power strength. The speed debuff is a fixed amount, so no power strength is going to affect that. Duration affects the length of time that his fire stays on the floor, as well as the drain by the toggle. Range mods only affect the explosion, so if you don't want to focus on the explosion, you don't really need range for this. That's pretty much all there is to Firewalker. As a general mobility mod, it's pretty decent. Plus the ability to cleanse your allies, the status effects, also apply fire procs, and the crowd control that comes from the proc. It's a very solid first ability, and one that scales really well if you ignore the actual damage of it. Now, as I mentioned, Firewalker's got good synergy with Nezha's second ability, Blazing Chakram. This ability will cause Nezha to throw out a ring of fire onto enemies, deals 100 heat damage, has a 100% chance to proc fire, will ragdoll the enemy it hits, and will also cause enemies to restore 225 health in an 8 meter radius if the enemy is struck by the ring dies. Now, in addition to that, while the ring is in the air, if you activate the ability again, you will teleport to the location where the ring is, and that's when you will get the explosion if you have Firewalker active when you teleport. The damage from the ability though is fixed, however the heal is affected by power range and power strength mods, plus the duration that the enemy is open for that heal, so if he's knocked down, he's still got the ability to have the heal if you can kill him then. It's increased with the use of duration mods. This ability has some really good crowd control use due to the fact it stuns the enemy it hits, plus it ragdolls them as well, so using this on high priority targets, heavy gunners, bombards, techs, stop them firing, it can be a very useful way of using this. Plus if you either use the teleport to reach hard to get to spots, or even as emergency escape if things get a bit hairy, there's no real downside to using this teleport. Once you've actually cast out the ring, teleporting doesn't use any extra energy, so I'd make use of that teleport if you can. It's another very simple but very effective ability. As is his third ability, Warding Halo. Well, less of the simple really, is a little bit to this one. When you cast it, he will summon a ring around him with 900 base health. Makes him immune to not only incoming damage, but also any status effects as well. When the ability is activated, Nezha will become invulnerable for 3 seconds. Any damage that is taken during that time will be added to the ring's health. Remember though that self-damage does not affect anything in this phase, so casting it and then blasting yourself with an Ogress will give you no benefit at all. In addition to this, any enemy within 2 meters of Nezha will be staggered and will be hit with 125 pure slash damage per second. Now this ability, much like Iron Skin for Rhino, has quite a bit that affects it. Nezha's total armor will be multiplied by 250% and then added to the ring's health. So increasing your armor with something like steel fiber will also make the ring take more damage. However, the armor multiplier is also affected by power strength, as is the base health, and the damage done per second to enemies, and range mods affect the range of the stun. Now, duration does not affect the invul duration, however, so there's no need to build for that. This ability is way better than I gave it credit for originally. It protects against all status effects, including toxin procs that normally just ignore your shield and just go for your health, plus the ability to take a ton of damage, especially if you activate it mid-combat, where the enemy incoming fire can add to the health during the invul timer. It's pretty much like Iron Skin on a frame designed to be fast and maneuverable and properly built. It can take a ton of damage, plus comes with a decent augment that I reviewed on Thursday and you can find in the description below. I am a big fan of this ability. And then we have his fourth ability, Divine Spears, which after the slightly more complicated warding halo, this is very simple. When Nezha casts it, spears of light erupt out of the ground. It impales enemies, dealing 600 puncture damage over a 19-meter radius for 12 seconds. If the ability is deactivated while the enemies are still impaled, it will deal an additional 600 impact damage when he slams them into the ground. All damage is affected by power strength, the range by range mods, duration the enemies are suspended is affected by duration mods. This is a pretty decent skill to be honest, and while the damage will drop off by the time you start getting to sortie level, the crowd control from suspending a whole bunch of enemies in the air will never drop off. And since enemies on the spike are considered as knocked down, combining this with melee weapons with good ground finishes will be a decent synergy. Should be noted though, that if the ability deactivates and the enemy doesn't die, if you reactivate it again too soon, the enemy will take the puncture damage, but will not be suspended in the air on that cast. It's some really good crowd control at any level. If you don't go into it thinking it's going to do insane damage, then you will actually like this ability quite a bit as well. Quick thing to mention though before we launch into builds is his passive, which is that he effectively gets a built-in maglev, where you slide faster and further. It really increases maneuverability. Be careful though, because this extra momentum does take some getting used to, where sliding past turns and stuff is a thing you're going to have to adjust to. The amount of times I've slid past where I want to go, or got stuck on something because I've slid too far. It takes some getting used to, but it's worth it when you do. So with all that said, how do I build him? Well, I've got 5 armor on here, 3 specific builds. Although this is definitely not the only build you can go with. As with all these videos, I do want to say this is not the only way to mod him, and may not be 100% the best builds. However, these are builds that do the job I build them for, at least in my experience, it does the job well. Now, the first build, it's a general build, a kind of support build really. It's built to get the most out of warding halo. Right now we have energy siphon in the aura, but that's always going to be personal preference. Then we got quick thinking and flow for the synergy, where you use the energy built up as your health pool. Then we try and max out warding halo as much as we can. Blind rage, power drift and energy conversion to try and push power strength up as far as possible. I go with energy conversion rather than intensify or transient fortitude because it's stronger than intensify, but doesn't have the duration drawback that transient does, at the cost of needing to have picked up an energy orb before you cast a halo. Then we got max steel fiber, which as we said also increases Nezha's armor, so you take less damage on the health, but also have to work with it also works with warding halo to give it more hit points. Finally, because we have a max blind rage on here, I have a max fleeting as well for efficiency. Now, the main reason I don't go with transient, as I said before, is the duration loss, and combining these two would mean I'd have almost no duration at all. Hurts both Firewalker and Divine Spears. This build does me extremely well, it's very tanky, and is actually a very balanced build, with this one being the one that I use for just everyday missions, to be honest. Unlike the second build, which is built for pure speed. I've got enemy radar in the aura right now, it's personal preference, but since energy siphon is disabled when Firewalker's active, I went with one that would actually let me know where the enemies are and I could avoid them. Sprint boost is also a dash. That could work as well, but I don't feel it gives enough. I don't think it gives enough back for it to actually be worth it, in my opinion. Then we got again quick thinking and prime flow as our survivability. Rush, speed drift, and armored agility for increasing the speed of Nezha, while also giving some extra armor for warding halo to give him a little bit more survivability as we run, as well as a bit of a faster casting speed. We also have cunning drift in here. We've got a bit of extra range on the stun from the warding halo, plus the extra slide range and less friction to synergize with her passive. Then fleeting and streamline for maximum efficiency. This build has a decent amount of personal preference in here, mostly revolving around cunning drift. You could switch this out for one of the mods like lightning dash if you're bullet jumping a lot, Wouldn't necessarily recommend that because the momentum while running is actually a bit faster than bullet jumping. Or you could switch out for coaction drift if you're using the sprint boost aura. Can't even get the words out. I love this build for speedrunning, and it's definitely a strong contender with Volt and Escape Velocity Nova for a speedrun champion. Now the third one I've got really focuses again on range for Divine Spears as a crowd control build. This is probably my squishiest build for him, and definitely playing in a group is going to be best. Once again, personal preference or aura, then speed drift for a bit faster speed, sprint speed while moving around, as well as your casting speed, since Divine Spears is not a quick ability to cast. Then we've got overextended stretching cunning drift to get as much range as possible, trying to catch as many enemies as we can to stop them shooting at the objective. Survivability is covered by quick thinking and prime flow once again, prime continuity to keep enemies in the air as long as possible, and then efficiency is covered by a rank 3 fleeting and a streamline. I go with a rank 3 because you only lose 5% efficiency, but you gain an extra 10% duration, so I feel that's a trade-off that's worth it. As I said, this build is focused around providing as much protection to the team as possible with the Divine Spears. Refreshing them as often as you can reasonably helps to catch enemies that are still just entering the range and can really lower incoming damage to your team. But now we've gone through all of this, the abilities, the builds, everything, what do I think about Nezha? The simple answer is that I've really got to like him in his playstyle. As I said earlier, I didn't particularly like Nezha when he first came out. I felt then that he wasn't designed the same way as the other frames that start off as a theme, like the Swordsmith, which became Excalibur, a fire-based frame that became Ember, the ice-based frame that became Frost, but was built off a specific character in Chinese mythology, just so the game could be marketed in China. While I still do believe this, I think that was probably the dislike of that fact that meant I just glossed over him originally when he first came out because I wanted to dislike him. But the truth of the matter is that because I love making content for you guys, I often go back and check out frames or weapons again, and more often than not, I find some part of them I really enjoy playing. Nezha is one of those. I found him tanky enough to deal with the sorties with the first build, plus buff my allies, fast enough that I wanted to use him in speedruns, and utilitarian enough to be good crowd control for a team with the range build. I love frames that can be built for different situations. They're not just built for one thing. I'm glad that I went back and checked him out again because I think it's another frame that I can see myself playing a bit more. However, he's never going to replace my beloved Nyx Prime, but then I don't think there's any frame that will. If you want to take him further and properly focus with arcanes, then there's a few you could use to good effect. Firstly is Arcane Energize for obvious reasons. Energy recovery from Energize is incredible and will keep you topped off all the time if you are picking up the orbs. And then Arcane Avenger is another awesome choice. Since Nezha can take fire and sort of shrug it off, rewarding Halo, having arcanes that pick up on that little fact that require on incoming fire and damage taken, like Avenger, for more flat crit chance is something that is good to have. These are the two main ones I would go for. I have an Arcane Energize on my Sindana, and when Arcanes are finally easier to move around, I will put on my Avenger as well. But Nezha, he's not that difficult to get hold of, but he's a fun and utilitarian frame that can be built pretty much any way you want, and for whatever role you want him for. A decent frame and a whole bunch of fun to play. I'm glad I went back to him again because it's been a really fun week. Maybe it's time to check out the other frame that came as part of the China deal, which is Wukong. Maybe I'll feel differently about him now. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below, whether you want to see Wukong as the next frame I take a look at, or what you feel about Nezha. As always though, huge thanks for watching. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I shall see you in the next video.